Atlanta News First Plus starts now.
Welcome to Atlanta News First Plus at your 11 o'clock hour on this Tuesday. We are going to take you through some of the breaking news and developing stories we are seeing out of our community here in Metro Atlanta. And this you're looking at is our continuing coverage of the moment a plane crashed onto a busy Gainesville road. It happened yesterday, just after noon. We're going to break down some of the moments before, during, and after to help explain and contextualize what we saw for more than 6 hours as law enforcement investigated and crews tried to clear this plane from the road. And we're also monitoring closely as time is running out for records, specifically an FBI warrant in January 28th's seizure at the Fulton County Elections Hub. FBI agents raided the Elections Hub, seizing more than 600 documents relating to the 2020 election. We're going to break down what's ahead still as the deadline to unseal those records at 5 o'clock tonight nears. But first, we want to talk about your upcoming weather. So I want to bring in First Alert meteorologist Isaac Williams with a look at your forecast. Isaac?
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, it's all about the warm weather. It feels fabulous out there. I just took a short break and came back in. And in the sunshine, it feels very, very warm, and we're going to continue to see that weather as we move into the rest of the day. In fact, you can see the high temperatures today in the 70s, and we're going to be just a couple degrees, several degrees, not too much, 4 shy of the record today as we move into this afternoon. This is going to be the warmest day that we have seen in a month. We had a stretch in January just after New Year's where we had 4 days in a row with temperature at 70 plus. But until then, or since then, I should say, it has been very, very chilly and cold out there. You can see some clouds moving in at times, but here in Atlanta, we've seen a lot of sunshine already. We're up to 56 degrees. We had some morning fog from Carrollton back to Thomaston and Griffin this morning. LaGrange saw a bunch of fog this morning too, but that has continued to slowly dissipate, and all of us will be enjoying some warmer weather today. It's already at 60 degrees in Gainesville and 65 in Rome. So the rest of the day, temperatures will make their way into the low 70s at least, followed by a very mild evening. Dinner plans tonight look dry. I'm not ruling out a chance at a shower in northwest Georgia by 9 p.m. and even as late as or as early as midnight, but definitely after midnight is when we're going to see rain chances substantially increase. But not to worry, Wednesday is not going to be super wet for all day. It's going to be wet for the morning, and then we're looking at much better weather into this afternoon, into Wednesday afternoon. Tomorrow morning's temperatures, we had some spots in the 30s this morning. We are not going to see that tomorrow. We're going to be in the 50s to near 60s, so a very mild day. It is a First Alert weather day Wednesday, not for a temperature swing, but for widespread rain coming in. We've got a 70% chance of showers in the morning. I'm going to take you to Futurecast in a second, but highs tomorrow back in the low 60s for most, so we're not going to be as warm as what we're going to see today, but notice through the rest of the 7-day, we have a couple more dry days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Valentine's looks decent, and then we've got a First Alert weather day coming up for Sunday, and that day looks very, very wet. This cold front that we're watching to the west, gathering up some moisture in Texas. We see some rain near Dallas and Fort Worth, back into West Texas. That's the front that's going to move into our area today and bring us a chance at some rain. This is 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Notice some rain already in the city, and then by 6 a.m. we continue to see rain push in. But I think the rush hour is actually going to be the wettest part of the day for Atlanta, unfortunately. So the morning tomorrow is going to be soggy and wet, and just for a few hours, even by 10 and 11 o'clock, we already see the rain coverage decrease. So tomorrow's First Alert weather day is just for the morning. We're looking at about a quick quarter to a half an inch of rain, so not even super impressive rain totals, but since it has been a while since we've had rain impact the morning, I definitely want to give you that heads up. By 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we're already seeing some sun break through, and I think everybody taps into some sunshine at some point tomorrow afternoon, and definitely no more rain as we move past about the lunch hour tomorrow. So it'll be a day where we drive into work cloudy, dreary, and rainy, and we drive home with the sunglasses, and it's going to feel really nice. Then let's talk quickly about Valentine's Day and then Sunday, and then we'll be done here with the weather side of things anyway. We've got showers returning Saturday night late, so that's the change from yesterday. We dropped the first alert weather day for Saturday. It does not look like we're going to have meaningful and impactful rain during the day. And even the evening plans, unless you're out past midnight Saturday night, which some of you may be, that might be a little rainy. But other than that, even up through midnight, I think mostly dry weather holds. Then the widespread heavy rain gets here on Sunday, and it could be a near washout day. So if you have plans on Sunday, go ahead and start thinking about moving them indoors or having some backup plans because you want to be inside. It's just going to be rainy and cloudy all day long on Sunday, where we're looking at the possibility to see 1 to 2 inches of rain. In fact, you can see here on our latest model anywhere from 1.1 to 1.9 inches of rain, and most of that falls Sunday. But some of that, remember, falls on Wednesday morning. So again, this is going to be the warmest day. 2 first alert weather days tomorrow morning and most of Sunday. But you can see even after Sunday's big rain and big storm system, we do not see a drop off in temperature. In fact, we stay in the middle 60s for temperature into next week on Monday. And Ella and I were looking at this. The longer range models are also keeping things fairly mild into most of next week. We're not saying winter's done yet by any stretch, but at least in the next 7 to 10 days, other than Thursday morning at 38 degrees, we are looking fairly mild. I see no major cold snaps anytime soon, but we do have the rain coming tomorrow and Sunday. We're going to bring Maria Moreau back in for some more news headlines here. That's the latest on your forecast here on ANF Plus, and we'll keep you posted, as always, throughout the rest of the day. Maria?
I know a lot of people are getting their Valentine's Day plans together. Hopefully you are, and you're not going to wait until the last minute. If you are somebody who celebrates, very good time to download the First Alert Weather app so you have that on your phone. Any changes to the forecast, we will notify you immediately in the app, and you'll get personalized custom forecasting from the largest team of meteorologists in the Southeast. We're pretty proud of that here at Atlanta News First. All right, I mentioned that we were going to talk about the plane crash that we saw in Gainesville yesterday. I'm just shifting gears here on settings, and then we can bring some of that footage back and talk about it for a bit. There we go. Hello, everybody. So I wanted to bring back this video showing you really the moment that that single-engine plane touched down in Gainesville. I'm going to make it larger here for you so you can see. This is in the area of Browns Bridge Road and Pearl Nicks Parkway. There are commercial businesses, restaurants in the area. There's a gas station, a lot of movement through that specific part of Gainesville. This is a video that you're seeing somebody took showing you really the moment that that plane had to make an emergency landing and then crashed into 3 vehicles. This is a Hawker Beechcraft BE-36 single engine. I just want to show you the flight path that it was taking. According to federal aviation officials, the plane left Gainesville Lee Gilmore Memorial Airport and was headed for the Cherokee County Regional Airport in Canton. Now, as you can see, it did not make it to its destination. The pilot expressing engine problems at around 12:10 p.m. I want you to watch the moment that the pilot realized that he was going to have to make that emergency landing. Take a listen.
We're not going to make it. Please tell my wife, Molly, I love her, and my parents. I love them so much.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, he certainly was preparing for the worst of the worst, and that's really the messaging that we heard from law enforcement officials who were notified of this and responded to the scene. We spoke with the investigators that are now, that first responded again to this roadway, and they said themselves that this could have been so much worse, that there were reportedly minor injuries, 3 cars suffered damage. The plane, of course, and the pilot the pilot is okay, the plane crashing, but it could have been so much worse is what officials keep emphasizing. I want to take you through an interview we did with those officers who responded. Take a listen to what they said.
When did this all happen, and what exactly took place?
At around the noon hour, we received our first 911 call of a plane crash on Georgia 369 Brownsbridge Road at Pearl Nicks Parkway. This is a main thoroughfare, a main artery through northeast Georgia. Typically hundreds of thousands of cars travel this roadway every day. So at around noon, emergency crews responded for a plane crash here. Upon arrival, they found the plane fully intact in the middle of the road. Unfortunately, 3 vehicles had been struck by the plane, but the plane was able to safely, if you could say so, land in the middle of the roadway. This is what we would consider a plane crash, but more so an emergency landing.
Hang on a second. Let me see that mic.
Is it me?
It is you. Sorry, sir.
It could be me.
He was doing so good too.
Hey, we can always start
Yeah,
over.
let's start over.
I was just in court and I had it. So
I
it
was-
took me 2
yeah.
seconds.
Y'all up here doing the
Well, and
Colton Gray
I
stuff?
looked and I was like, well, I don't see the switch.
I was at a hearing for a woman who was sent to jail for the rest of her life.
I knew I was screwed the day when everybody was up here for the Colton Gray stuff, the Appalachian
Yeah.
school shooting, and I was like, oh, they're...
Happened here.
So at around noon, emergency crews got their first 911 call of a plane crash on Georgia 369 Brownsbridge Road at Pearl Nicks Parkway. This is a major artery through Gainesville, actually through northeast Georgia. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles travel this roadway each and every day. So emergency crews were really expecting the worst of the worst when they responded. Upon arrival, they found a plane fully intact in the middle of the roadway. Unfortunately, 3 vehicles were struck during this emergency landing. Those parties, 2 of those were transported to Northeast Georgia Medical Center. They are in stable condition. They received what we would consider minor injuries. This is what we would consider a plane crash, but also an emergency landing. The pilot, there were 2 occupants on board of this plane. They left the Gainesville airport headed toward the Cherokee area. They immediately realized that there was something wrong with the plane. They knew that they had to make a landing. They attempted to make it back to the Gainesville airport, but unfortunately quickly realized they were not going to make it. This is an area, Gainesville is pretty much surrounded by Lake Lanier. They made it back here. This is a very large commercial area. They traveled the roadway here, came down on Brownsbridge Road, and unfortunately struck 3 vehicles. But this is one of those situations where, albeit we had minor injuries today, we didn't have any fatalities. This is typically a situation which we would see multiple fatalities. The fact that the plane struck a vehicle, the fuel compartment came off one of the wings, was lodged into the back of this vehicle, and didn't, cause some type of explosion is just absolutely remarkable. Both pilots are out walking around, so this is typically something that we just don't see every day.
Man, this is something else. So what's the, you don't know exactly what was wrong with the aircraft? Have you learned?
At this time, the case is still under investigation. FAA just arrived on scene. We are working with them. Again, this is a major artery through Gainesville, northeast Georgia. That's going to be closed down for some time as we're trying to get this plane out of here. The mere fact that this plane came down, didn't strike any power poles, power lines, and only hit 3 vehicles is absolutely amazing. We are within, feet of restaurants that were packed out for the lunch hour, and we're very fortunate that those individuals only got a show today and were able to walk away.
It's unbelievable. Like you said, the fact that no power lines were hit the process or anything, I mean, it's incredible. And so what happens now with the aircraft? And I know the roadway is closed until you can get it out of the way.
So now we have a very challenging issue of how do we remove this plane from the roadway and the center of town. We're currently waiting on crews to arrive. We're going to take this plane, hopefully put it on a flatbed truck. We are working with our public utilities group to escort this plane back through town to the Gainesville airport, which is less than a mile away. So hopefully we can do that safely. But again, we've got some work to do here as far as the investigation goes. You had a pilot on board and what I would call a veteran pilot, and then you had what I would consider a student pilot. The second pilot on board was actually waiting, getting their hours in so they could do their solo flights. But again, the fact that they were able to land this on a 5-lane roadway in the middle of lunch traffic, to me says a whole lot.
Was this a pilot school? Was this a student that was learning through a pilot school?
I'm not certain of that. I know the plane is privately owned and by one of the individuals who was on it. However, I do know that they were working to get their solo flight status. I'm no pilot. I can't give them the license, but I'd say that they certainly passed the test today.
But you know the veteran pilot who was providing this lesson obviously would have been the one that was in main control of the aircraft as this emergency was taking place.
No doubt, as the emergency takes place, the veteran pilot takes over. Just down the road here, they explained to me there's a Mega Millions of Georgia Lottery sign. That's what they were aiming for, to be able to get into the roadway.
And just to show you, this is that same plane being towed away. Crews lifting the Beechcraft Bonanza off of the roadway and onto the flatbed after several hours investigating. I just want to emphasize this is from yesterday. Video that we are showing you as this roadway along Browns Bridge Road and Pearl Nicks in Gainesville was closed for more than 6 hours. This is that same escort taking the plane back to the airport, and as you just heard from our interview, the pilot making it about a mile from where this plane took off, headed for Cherokee County Regional Airport. Of course, the plane did not make it to that destination, and it was towed back to Gainesville Lee Gilmer Memorial. Now, airport officials, NTSB, now conducting and leading this investigation. We will have a preliminary report for you within 30 days. That is usually with the standard of these investigations. The NTSB is required to offer that preliminary report. We, of course, will stay on top of that and bring you those details on air, online, and right here on ANF Plus of what comes of it. In the meantime, I want to talk about another story, a major one we've been following since the start of this week and really since last month, as we talk about the January FBI raid at a Fulton County elections hub pertaining to the 2020 election. Now, hundreds of documents were seized in that raid. The deadline now is closing in on a court order deadline to unseal warrants and supporting documents connected to that office raid. The warrant is scheduled to be released by this evening, no later than 5 o'clock. Those records will give us a much clearer picture of why the FBI raided the elections hub to begin with. I want to show you some other video that we got here. The federal judge who ordered the release said the Justice Department did not object to the unsealing of the warrant. Fulton County has separately sued for the immediate return of all of those seized ballots. But we are looking closely as to what those records could reveal and to break down exactly what we saw back in January and what we're waiting for here today is Atlanta News First political reporter Doug Reardon and investigative producer Tim Darnell. Take a listen.
We are awaiting any moment now, and this can come at just about any moment or any minute or any second, the release of the federal government search warrant, the FBI search warrant, as it related to the late January 2026 federal government raid at the Fulton County Elections Hub and Election Central in Union City. I'm Tim Darnell, digital reporter, digital content producer here at Atlanta News First, joined by my good friend and colleague Doug Reardon, the hardest working political reporter in the Southeast. Doug, I was just settling in on Sunday, getting ready for the Super Bowl, when I saw an alert from Atlanta News First that a federal judge has actually ordered the U.S. Department of Justice to unseal virtually all of the details, with the exception of some officials' names, which we are expecting to be redacted. But all of the details related to this stunning search warrant that happened toward the end of January. It was arguably one of the biggest political stories of this young year so far. I'm sure we're going to have plenty more. But we are anticipating now that the federal government, the U.S. Department of Justice, will, any minute now, unseal all of the details related to the FBI search warrant. This is a really stunning the latest stunning development to what was a very shocking elections hub search warrant execution at the end of January.
Yeah, and I was in the same boat. My Patriots were playing last night, and I got that alert, and then things just kind of went downhill from there. So, but it was big news. This is something that right off the top, right, disclosure-wise, we should note that we were part of a lawsuit along with several other media groups, including most of the local TV affiliates, the Associated Press, CNN, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that had also taken legal action to get this search warrant unsealed. And I think if anyone is wondering why it is so important that we have this document, it is because it will tell us why they were there in the first place. We know that there was kind of a supplementary affidavit, if you will, that was released that kind of listed two of the charges that they were there to investigate. One had to do with a loss that requires states, and specifically in this case Georgia, to store ballots for up to 22 months after the election. They had to store them legally for much longer because there were lawsuits playing out, there were challenges playing out, and so those ballots were, kind of the focus of a lot of fights over the course of the last 6 years. And so that was one of the reasons. The other one had to do with a law that prohibits incorrectly tabulating votes, and we can only suspect that that had something to do with the ticker tape admission that came out a couple of weeks ago, where it was discovered that Fulton County workers had signed ticker tapes that they hadn't reviewed. Those ticker tapes are basically like receipts that you get that the machine spits out when you go and tabulate ballots, and even Fulton County said, we messed that one up, that's on us. It was about 150,000 votes that were incorrectly certified as admitted by the county. So those are our best guesses, but that is all that we have right now to kind of dictate why the FBI was there, how they were able to go and take this, I hate to use the word unprecedented, but how they were able to take this unprecedented move of just showing up to an elections hub and leaving with 700 boxes of ballots from an entire county's election. And so this will tell us a lot more about the legal standing for them to be able to do that, and kind of the evidence that they were reviewing that allowed this warrant to be issued by a federal judge. We should get that sometime, as you said, in the next couple of days or so. We know that Tuesday, close of business, is the deadline that was set by federal Judge Brulé in making this order to release these documents, including that search warrant.
You mentioned Judge Brulé. He was an appointee of President Donald Trump to the U.S. Northern District of Georgia Federal Circuit. This order came down Sunday afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, as I recall. You were on scene, and you were reporting live from the Union City, Georgia, and South Fulton County, where the elections hub and headquarters are located. And it was very unusual when we began seeing reports. This was on January 28th, that Tulsi Gabbard, who was the director of national intelligence, was on the scene. That has caused a lot of confusion and a lot of controversy.
It has. It was confusing to us when we heard, I'll be honest with you, in a parking lot full of really smart, intelligent reporters, we were all really confused as to why Tulsi Gabbard, who is essentially the spy chief of the United States, was coming down to the FBI hub that day, within a few hours of the raid, to kind of survey the scene. Of course, national security and elections don't always have a clear crossover, and so it was confusing as to why the person who is in charge of the nation's intelligence would be having to do with what she would have to do with an FBI raid in Fulton County. It suggests that they are looking at some type of foreign interference, perhaps, in that 2020 election. Of course, we know that this is an election that has been audited, reviewed, investigated multiple times, including by the Republican-led House and Senate here in Georgia, and there was no evidence of fraud, and there was no evidence of anything that would have tipped the scales in the favor of Donald Trump in this state. But still, her presence there certainly suggests the desire to look into some sort of foreign tie to the 2020 election, and that is about all we know. Maybe there will be more. We hope that there will be more in the search warrant that would kind of indicate why people like Tulsi Gabbard were there that day instead of just, FBI officials.
And it'll be interesting to see if her name or other federal officials' names are actually redacted from this report. We're talking about over 600 boxes that were all related to Fulton County's 2020 presidential election. We're all familiar with the phone call, and you can listen to the phone call on Atlanta News First in all of our elections coverage. The very famous phone call that Donald Trump made from the White House in early January 2021. His chief of staff, Mark Meadows, was also on the line making this phone call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, asking the Secretary of State to help find a certain number of votes. Can't recall, 13,000, several thousand votes that would help.
11,700.
11,700. You got it memorized. I knew you would.
Yeah.
To help him win Georgia and possibly win his 2020 election bid. That obviously did not happen. Now the federal government, the Department of Justice, the FBI, is in possession of those 600 and some odd boxes of tabulator tapes, perhaps, ballot records, perhaps. Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts has been very vocal that he does not know where these ballots are. He does not know what's being done to them. There's obviously a little bit of a fear and apprehension on Fulton County officials' parts that when these ballots, if they are ever returned, that they're going to come up with a little bit of a different result than what happened in 2020.
Yeah, and Pitts was very clear. By the way, the county has sued to get those ballots back. They filed that lawsuit last week. But, Pitts' fear, a lot of fear from Democratic state lawmakers, federal state lawmakers like John Ossoff, who told me this just last week. Their concern is that those are the original ballots. There is no more authentic version of those votes than what the FBI came in and got out of that warehouse in Union City. And so the fear among a lot of people who are opposed to this move is that you have the originals. There's no way for us to check your work. So whoever is investigating this, whoever has these ballots, by the way, we still don't have the answers to either of those questions. When they look at them, if they find something that they say is nefarious, or if there are results that look different than the results did back in 2020 and 2021 when these audits were being done, there's no way for anyone to really call them out on those results because those are the original ballots. There's nothing to cross-reference them with. Rob Pitts went as far to say last week in filing that lawsuit as saying, I felt comfortable telling Fulton County citizens that I could protect their ballots a couple of days ago, and now I can't make that assurance because I don't have them. And so, again, it is important for people to know that those are the original ballots. They are the real thing, and the concern is that if there is something found, as Donald Trump said, things are going to come out in Fulton County. There's really no way for anyone to cross-reference that.
It's very interesting, just the political dynamics that are working not only nationally and locally, but also locally here in Fulton County. We have Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts, whom you have interviewed for our weekly political show on Atlanta News First, called On the Record, who is running for re-election as Fulton County Commission Chairman. But he also has a challenger, Fulton County Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr., who has kind of gone out of his way to take credit for this lawsuit that was filed last week. Fulton County, as you mentioned, has filed a lawsuit seeking the return of all of these 600 and some odd boxes of elections records related to 2020, if I can enunciate correctly. What's the political dynamic between Arrington and Pitts? Because I think, as I recall from some of your reporting, Arrington is also challenging and hoping to become the next chairman of the Fulton County Commission.
Yeah, and as we understand it, that is still the case. He is one of the challengers that is coming from Rob Pitts' own board. There's always politics at play, right? We always say it's always an election year in Georgia. Right. And, of course, that's the case. Marvin Arrington, who many people know his father, Marvin Arrington Sr., who was a very influential person here in Atlanta and served in many different roles in leadership. But I remember when I asked Rob Pitts about Arrington Jr. running against him as a member of his own board, he said his father would be rolling over in his grave. So this is obviously an adversarial relationship when it comes to any campaigning that will be done between Rob Pitts and Marvin Arrington Jr. And so Marvin Arrington Jr. was for sure out there that day, and then in subsequent days afterwards, and even up until the end of last week, has been a very outspoken voice on this raid, and has really tried to put himself at the helm of this fight to get those ballots back. And so, you can only assume that, as any good politician would do, they would seize on the opportunity to take hold of a big story and try and, make themselves the hero of it, certainly. Now, eventually, we did learn that the lawsuit that Fulton County filed was actually, and he even said this in his press conference, Rob Pitts versus the United States of America. So it was very clear who actually went ahead and filed this lawsuit. Was it political? Probably. In election years, you got to do stuff to stand out, and I think both of these men are certainly, putting themselves at the fore of this fight over these ballots in Fulton County, and it's very likely because voters will have to themselves go to the polls and elect one of them in the upcoming election.
I want to go back for just a moment to the 130,000 tabulator tapes that Fulton County elections officials admitted they miscalculated last year, and that was, if I recall our metrics correctly, that was one of our leading stories for that week and for a couple of weeks here on Atlanta News First. It was picked up by a number of national news outlets and reported by several national news outlets. That has kind of rekindled the controversy going back to the 2020 election. You have a lot of loyalists for President Donald Trump saying, see, now the truth is coming out. We have uncovered the fact that Fulton County did indeed miscalculate some ballots related to the 2020 election. Others who are opponents of the president and his current administration are continuing to point out to the fact that Fulton County has repeatedly been cleared of any wrongdoing or any nefarious undertakings as it relates to the counting of the ballots in 2020. Take us a little bit deeper into the discussion of why these tabulator tapes are so important to what's going on in the current environment.
Yeah, they are very important. They're kind of the last line of defense, if you will. They're the last line of double checking that happens when election workers are going through the process of kind of certifying these election results. Like I said earlier, they're the receipts that these ballot machines spit out. They allow you to see how many people have voted, and they allow you to cross-reference that with the number of votes that you actually have. The ballots up against the people, right, to make sure that those numbers match. They print it out. I'm not kidding. It literally looks like a receipt you get at CVS. You look at the votes, you look at the voters, and you got to have those two numbers match. Now, there were instances, as you mentioned, about somewhere between 130 and 150,000 of those that did not match. They were still signed off on, though, by election workers of Fulton County. The county, at a recent elections board hearing, admitted that that was something that happened. They took full responsibility for it. However, admitted that it was negligible in the ultimate results of the election. Even Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger called it, in his words, a clerical error, and said that it did not taint the security, the fairness of that election in 2020. But of course, with a certain segment of the Georgia population who feels like there was something wrong in that 2020 election, it certainly seemed to be a canary in the coal mine for them. It was something to grasp onto, to point and say, look, something did go wrong. It was a bit of hope for that contingency of people who still believe that there was something wrong with the 2020 election. And certainly they're right. I mean, that's not good. You don't want your elections workers to be signing off on tabulator tapes that don't match or that haven't been reviewed by the proper people. And Fulton County admitted as such. But again, we are not even close to talking about an 11,000 vote differential when we talk about, some of the votes that, again, it doesn't mean that they were fraudulent. It just means the paperwork was not done correctly, right? And so I think that was an important distinction that people like Secretary of State Raffensperger were making, in that it's not that there were 150 fraudulent votes, it's just that those tabulator tapes accounted for that number of votes, and they just weren't signed correctly. It doesn't taint, as he said, the accuracy of the votes themselves or the legitimacy of the vote themselves. It was a chain of custody issue that went wrong. Fulton County admitted as such, but it really gave some folks something to latch onto here. And I think they're the same contingency of folks who were expecting to find something in the 700 boxes of ballots that were carted off last month.
What are the chances, from your point of view, of these ballots actually being returned to Fulton County? Rob Pitts, and as we have been talking about, and county officials have filed a lawsuit seeking the return of the 600 some odd boxes of election ballots, tabulator tapes, who knows what else, election records related to the 2020 election, wanting these boxes returned. What are the chances that lawsuit is actually going to have any effect at all? And if so, what kind of conditions will these records be returned to the county? Will they be in a pristine condition, or will they show evidence of tampering or something else? Just give me a little bit of speculation here.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure whether or not the request by Fulton County to return those ballots will be granted. They're arguing that it was a Fourth Amendment violation, that it was basically an unlawful search and seizure of ballots. Keep in mind that ballots can contain some personally identifying information for people, their names, their birth dates, their social security. Does the government have that already? Very likely, but again, it's another source that people just don't want their information getting out there from. Hard to say if the judge will see it the way that Rob Pitts does, in saying that those ballots do belong to the county. I think having the search warrant eventually will tell us a little bit more about how legitimate the government's case was in going in to get them. But again, we just very recently, in our most recent episode of On the Record, spoke to Sally Grubbs, who's a member of the State Elections Board, and I asked her point blank, I said, I know you support the fact that there should be more review into the election, that maybe something went wrong with the 2020 election, but don't you want to know where the ballots are, as someone who's a member of the State Elections Board? And what she said I thought was very insightful, where she was like, look, if the FBI and the government or whoever has to have these documents, I think there should be a protective order put in place for the Elections Board, at the very least, to be able to have the information about where these ballots are being kept, what's being done with them, can they be involved in the investigation. It would just give Georgia some sort of in and some sort of tie to whatever is going to happen with these ballots, whether or not they are returned. And I think that's what everybody, from Republican members of the State Elections Board to the Republican Secretary of State to Democratic Senator John Ossoff, want assurances on is, will these ballots be handled properly, and will we know the true outcome of whatever the investigation is going to be? That seems to be the universal thing across everyone here in Georgia.
This is all happening in a critical election year. 2026, Georgia is home to some of the most nationally watched midterm elections going on this year. We have wide open seats in governor's mansion, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general. Several, John Ossoff is fending off a very tough election challenge from the Republican Party. Who knows who that candidate will be? What are the political ramifications moving forward of the fact that we are now only just moments, minutes, seconds, hours away from the release of details regarding the search warrant at the Fulton County Elections Hub in late January? How is this going to play out in one of the most nationally watched midterm election states in the nation?
it is definitely something that people are thinking about. Senator Ossoff in his rally this weekend said that they're up to mischief, is what he called it, with the 2026 election. A lot of politicians at the state level have told me this is more about 2026 than it is about 2020, because, you know, there are some rumblings that maybe Democrats may have a big swing. We've already had a lot of retirements or upcoming retirements and resignations from the House in the Georgia delegation. I mean, 4 on the Republican side already, between people running and people who have retired, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, recently Barry Loudermilk. And so there is a lot of potential for shakeup. And the prevailing thought on the side of many Democrats and many progressives in the state is that this was just a move to intimidate voters. This was a move to flex the power of the federal government and say, you know, we didn't like what you did in 2020. We can really do a whole lot about it in 2026 as the midterms approach here. And so the prevailing thought among a lot of people who didn't support this rate is that it was more about the upcoming midterms than it was about that election 6 years ago, and kind of, a show of force, if you will, by the federal government to just come in, grab these ballots and say, we can do this again if we have to.
Well, this will be one of the most important, one of the biggest and most widely anticipated developments this week in Georgia politics. That being, we are awaiting the release of all of the details regarding the search warrant that led the Federal Bureau of Investigation to execute a search warrant last month at the Fulton County Elections Hub, Election Central, where they seized several hundred boxes related to the results of the 2020 presidential election in Fulton County. We will have all of the late-breaking details. We will have the story when the records are actually released. You will be able to read and watch all of them as it plays on Atlanta News First. For Doug Reardon, I'm Tim Darnell.
Thank you for watching A&F Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.